Merry Christmas to all of you that are watching Auto Network Reports. Mr. Greg Morrison and I from Bumper to Bumper TV will bring you up to date on the latest automotive news. But before we get into the news, that we are on blackpressusa.com. And I always have to say, if you know an African American male that's 30 years or older, make sure he visits his urologist and get that PSA exam. And please subscribe to Mr. Morrison's Bumper to Bumper TV channel, also to subscribe to Auto Network. Before we get into one of the hot topics of the day, which is the new Dodge Charger Daytona EV, we have one recall. General Motors recalling 132,000 of their heavy-duty trucks for a faulty tailgate. The power lock could short circuit and unlocked unexpectedly while in park, which means you may pull away with a load that may not be a load when you get where you're going if the tailgate drops.
Hey, it increases your fuel efficiency. Don't knock it.
And I want to say Merry Christmas again. Merry Christmas again. In the news, we're going to get into the Dodge Charger information, but I want to talk about a couple of, I guess you would say, promotions, so to speak. Randy Parker is now the new head of Hyundai and Genesis. He's their new CEO. I forgot what position Randy held before, but he's been with Hyundai for quite a while.
He was president of Hyundai North America alone.
Oh, okay. And on the Ram side, on the Ram side, Tim Kuniskis is back. As you know, about 6 weeks ago, he was retired, and he's back because Carlos Tavares has left the company, and he says amicably, but it depends on who you talk to, but whatever, he's no longer there. Tim Kuniskis is now back at Ram. It's going to be interesting to see what happens to the Ram.
Well,
probably one of the most. Go ahead, Greg. I'm sorry.
I would say those two critical notes of information is who's who. For Randy Parker, I mean, he has worked his way up through Hyundai for a while, and being able to take over the Genesis brand, which is their luxury house side of the house, says that he's doing everything right. And we've known Randy for a few years. We've watched him grow and do some good things. On the other hand, Tim Kuniskis coming back to Ram brand is basically somebody who knows something about the American auto market. Carlos Tavares may have been a great European marketer and good numbers guy, but he did not understand the North American market. And look at what Stellantis is putting out from their Detroit brands. Dodge has one vehicle, the Charger, the EV, which we think is wonderful. Chrysler has one vehicle, the Pacifica. These are two brands that used to have a full lineup. Jeep has a series of vehicles, but you can't let Jeep drive that whole bus by itself because it's just not sustainable, especially when you start talking about six-figure Jeeps. So bringing somebody in who actually knows the North American market and has the trust of the dealer body is really important. And Carlos Tavares, for all of his brilliance, did not have the good relation with the U.S. dealer body who are complaining about not having new content to show folks. And none of these brands have a plug-in hybrid. Duh. What's going on there?
Well, you know my thoughts about plug-in hybrids. Well, one more attention-getting story that's gotten probably the most press here lately, and that's Jaguar going into the luxury car, super luxury car class. They're going to completely revamp Jaguar, and these new cars will be twice as much as their old cars cost. And if you look at the concept that they showed, that's what's developing all of the conversation around the concept as to what it looks like. It looks like nothing that's out there in the marketplace. I always say it probably looks like something that you'd see in the Batman movies, but
Well, I mean, for Jaguar Land Rover, um, what they've done is definitely moved away from their classic lines and the classic designs. Their new concept doesn't even have the leaping cat on it anymore. And for
Right.
Jaguar loyalists, that's like, oh my God, it's pearl clutching time. And I can understand the loyalists who say, wait a minute, we love that leaping cat that's made us buy over and over again. The brand did need a serious refresh. And I think they just said, let's go buck wild and go for it. Different color scheme, different attitude. Going into the supercar space with, doubling the price, almost doubling the price of what they're going to offer.
Right.
But it is interesting. You're also going to be all electric. And remember, Jaguar, one of the things that they had always been part of their legacy was that growl of that engine, that sound that was distinctively Jaguar. Not Jaguar, Jaguar. As I've learned from our Brit friends. So they're going to have a steep road to climb to really bring in people to this new look, new approach, because it's so shocking and so different. I mean, they've stopped building internal combustion engine vehicles completely and going to switch over completely to EVs. Yeah, it's going to be a challenge for them going forward. Before I forget, I think one of the stories that we should really pay attention to is the fact that Nissan and Hyundai and Honda are having merger talk. And now Foxconn, the folks who make our cell phones, they also want to buy a piece of Nissan. Because as we all know, Nissan has had its share of financial challenges and difficulties ever since the Japanese government indicted Carlos Ghosn, and things have not gone well for the brand since then.
Right, right. Well, let's get into the main topic of the day, which is the Charger. And you were talking about growling. Dodge has released what they're calling the world's quickest and most powerful muscle car, the world's first electric muscle car. And they've added for the exhaust note what they call a fratzonic sound. This car delivers 670 horsepower, 627 pound-feet of torque, 0 to 60 in 3.3 seconds. Now, it's larger than the other Chargers that have been out there. It's also faster than anything out there. So it's going to be interesting to see what the consumer has to say as to whether or not this is a true muscle car or not. So I guess the question is, what makes a muscle car?
Yeah, I mean, traditionally it used to be how much horsepower you had and how fast it could go from 0 to 60 and, how much noise it could make. Obviously, with an electric muscle car, you got no noise unless you do an augment, which Dodge has done. And you remember a couple of years ago at the Chicago Auto Show, they demonstrated what that sound might look and sound like on a vehicle. Because people who like that kind of vehicle want that visceral sound, that visceral experience of, yeah, let's get it. Let's hear that engine roar, and then the squealing tires is going to happen because it's still a rear-wheel drive, and it'll tear up some pavement too.
Speaking of tearing up, on this event, they actually tore up the rear tires, and the tires on this Charger kind of staggered. They have smaller tires on the front and larger tires on the rear. And at the end of this piece here, they actually tore up the rear tires on that car.
Oh, I can believe it, because that's really hard torquing, especially those fishtailing moves. And it's like, look at that smoke coming out those tires.
Yeah, they were drifting. Now that's drifting.
Just a little. Just a little.
So again, it's going to be interesting to see what the consumer thinks about this, whether this is a muscle car or not, or has Dodge redefined what a muscle car truly is.
Yeah, well, I think they've proven that EVs are so quick. 3 seconds, 3+ seconds to get from 0 to 60. That's next level. And this is the Daytona, correct?
Yeah. 670 horsepower.
what's the MSRP on it going to be?
I think they start at around 59,000, and I believe the high end is close to 70, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that would
Everybody
make
was
sense.
applauding. Everybody was applauding there because the tires, the tires literally ripped off the rear wheels of that car. So
Yeah, then some poor schmuck's got to get out there, get up under it, jack it up, put a new set of tires on it that are
Hey.
cool because the ones that they're checking off are on fire.
yeah, well that's what it's all about. Let's take another look at this car. This is Roosevelt with Auto Network. We just had a full presentation. There was a full presentation of
new
of
Dodge
all the models, but mostly they had there were the Daytonas for us to drive,
We have the
and it was
Daytona.
interesting to do some street driving. Heads are turning,
Going.
looking at the car.
I have the full presentation.
It performed well on the road. It rides well. It definitely handles well. It has a smooth ride. You have several drive modes that you can put it in, and they have a drive mode that's called what do they call it? Yeah, something about shot something, where you can push a button and you get something like 40 extra horsepower.
It's like getting shot out of a gun.
Yeah, I forgot what they call that. But anyway, you be at a standstill, hold on the brake, hit the accelerator, and then hit the punch the button. You get 40 extra pounds.
One thing I noticed, is that when you open the
Go ahead.
you say, when you open that trunk lid, it's like a hatchback because there's no separate trunk there.
Right.
But, folks who are buying this car are buying it to drive fast and to see how fast they can get away with before, the blue light special comes on. I think it'll be interesting on behalf of law enforcement as they try to chase these things down. Because can you imagine you're driving an internal combustion Charger even, and you're chasing an EV Charger that can just disappear over the horizon with a blink of an eye? It's going to get real interesting.
Well, I think I talked about it a couple weeks ago. Lucid, actually out in California, was trying to get their car approved as a police car, mainly because of what you just said. Most of the EVs out there now will outrun police cars. Not just the Charger with 670 horsepower, but there's some other EVs out there, majority of them I would think, that have less horsepower, but it's that instant torque that takes them away from a police cruiser that's, that's chasing them. Now, I don't know whether, I can't see a Lucid as a police car. Even the Charger you could probably see the Charger as a police car, because I think back in the day they had some Chargers as police cars.
Well,
but this is what they're going to need. This is what the police force is going to need, like you said, to be able to catch the other guy out there that has more horsepower.
Well, in Atlanta and in Georgia, state police and city police are driving Chargers now.
Oh, okay.
Now, my question is, will Dodge create a police package in the EV side that, can take that heavy, hard driving that law enforcement vehicles have, a lot of stop and go, sometimes that high speed pursuit and hard driving. If they create a police package to do that, then EV or not, if they're going to chase you, they're going to chase you. And let's face it, you can't outrun Motorola. So the best thing you can do.
Go ahead.
It's the best thing you can do if you decide you want to really challenge the law with something like this, is be prepared to just give them your license and your money at some point, because if they get your tag number, or if they can figure out who you are, they're going to send you the citation.
Oh, yeah. The other thing is, I don't know whether the police departments have the budgets yet to have EVs as police cars. As we all know, EV prices are still up, even though they're coming down. I think they're probably a little too expensive yet for police department budget. So we'll see what happens with that. Even with the incentives, it's still a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean, and that's maybe one of the reasons that a guy like Tim Kuniskis can come back and figure out a way to address that issue. Because for the Dodge brand, I'm sorry about Dodge, I made a mistake. They have two vehicles that they're still selling: the Durango and
Right.
the Charger, both of which have been embraced by police departments for daily driving because they're tough, rugged vehicles. I would not be surprised if Kuniskis and his boys are not already working on a police package with pricing that'll work for local and state governments.
Well,
And
like
and
I
what I'm-
said, go ahead.
And the only question I would say is the charging apparatus that would be necessary to keep them ready to go for an 8-hour shift for a police officer. Because most police precincts I go by, they don't have level 1 or level 2 charging, let alone the level 3 charging you need to get these vehicles up and charged, ready to go in a hurry.
And if they're out cruising around, I think these have the RT, I believe, has a range of like 300, a little over 300 miles. But the Daytona is somewhere around
Yeah, which is-
240, 250. So cruising
Average
on
police cruiser
a,
does about, yeah.
I don't know how many miles they travel in a shift just cruising around, but that's something to take into consideration.
Yeah, most police cruisers do about 60 miles a day on just patrolling.
So it'll handle that easy.
Yeah. But, I would love to see it because, and the other thing is they'd have to reconfigure that back seat for a prisoner cage.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You know.
But it was it the car is a fun car to drive, no question about it. Putting the speed aside, it's easy a daily driver for anybody. It looks great. It handles well. It has a very comfortable ride. That's a new R-Ring wing that they put there, which is a front spoiler that you
Really?
normally see on the rear.
And there's a frunk.
Yeah, in the front.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool, man.
So that,
You know.
like I said, it's going to be interesting to see what the Buff Books really do. Talk about this car. How do they position it in the minds of the true muscle car enthusiasts? So it'll be interesting.
Now, when you're on,
Go
you
ahead.
said it handled well on regular roads. Is it front heavy or back heavy, or how's it? Where's the weight? Most of the weight in the vehicle.
I found it to be pretty much evenly balanced, to be honest with you. Even though it had that huge rear hatch, I didn't find that it was
Charger Daytona. This is the lead follow.
had any problems going through curves. I didn't feel any body roll. I felt it was quite stable on the highway. So, like I said, I think it would easily be a daily driver.
Yeah, I can see that.
But this is where most people would like to take it at least once.
At least once, and then buy a new set of
least-
tires.
Yeah, at least one time they'd love to be able to do this. And the fact is to know that your EV can do that.
I was fascinated watching people think, well, I don't like an EV because it can't do this, it can't go fast. I said, obviously you don't know what it's like. You've never driven one, because as you and I
Exactly.
know, when you punch it, it's gone. It's
It's
turning
gone.
on that light switch.
Yeah.
And it's always, I remember the first time I had an EV by another manufacturer. I won't mention their name, but my next door neighbor who loves cars said, hey, I got to take a ride in this. I said, let's go. So I let him drive while I'm shooting. And I gave him the instructions, said, let's go up here to the expressway and turn on the expressway ramp, go to the top of the ramp and just stop. And he looks at me like I've got three heads. I said, just stop. Trust me on this. So we're stopped. He said, you're going to make this? I says, now punch it. And he jumps on it. It's 2 seconds later, he's going, whoa! because that instant torque he was not
Yes.
expecting.
Yeah. I mean, you could take the Nissan Leaf and it has that instant.
It may not have range, but it's got the instant torque.
Yeah, all like you said, all the EVs have that instant torque. Well, let's jump into some other topics. Cox dealer sentiment. Their index shows that auto dealers are optimistic about the future. And as we all know, the election is over now. Everybody knows who's going to be in place. Interest rates have dropped a little. But I still think that there is a lot of uncertainty as to what's going to happen in the auto industry after January the 20th. So I wouldn't feel as confident as they are, especially when we look at EVs and what consumers are interested in, more charging stations. Go ahead, Greg.
And the other thing is what no one wants to talk about is that a number of the domestic nameplates that we are so familiar with are built in Mexico and in Canada.
Right.
And if you start throwing tariffs on that, that's going to jack up the price, and it's going to be a bit of sticker shock on that. I would not be surprised if some dealers are going ahead and ordering as many vehicles as they can now, and say, "Let me get them across the border without the tariff before the price goes up with the tariff." And that's going to be the interesting part of the conversation, because it's one thing to say, "I'm going to throw tariffs up against Mexico and Canada, just to make sure we get more manufacturing in the U.S." But you're hurting yourself. And the Canadian tariff will hurt folks twice or three times, because we get a lot of oil from Canada. How much of that shale oil we're using? And as far as the construction industry is concerned, where do you think they're getting the wood to build houses with? So it's going to get interesting. But for the auto industry, I think some of it is whistling past the graveyard. Some of it is hoping that this next administration will be friendly toward the auto industry. I'm, watching it with a jaundiced eye, because I do remember quite vividly what happened from 2016 to 2020 in terms of really encouraging technological development and advancement in mobility. It was like, yeah, we can do it, but we're not getting the support we need from the U.S. government. So it's going to be an interesting dance to watch for the next few months.
Right. Well, Tesla owners now can use an Apple Watch like a key to get into their automobile, opening and I know how much you love Tesla, Greg.
Well, they can get into it. They can drive it. But, you're paying for a technology expense that, it's interesting, because the idea of using a device, i.e. a watch or a phone, to unlock a car is not new. In fact, Hyundai, for several years, and a couple other brands for several years, have been able to use Android devices to unlock a car, but it hadn't gotten through to Apple. So I guess they worked out a deal with Apple for the licensing the technology to make that happen. And that's, a wonderful thing, be able to not have to carry an extra key around. You're wearing your key because it's in your pocket or on your wrist. That's a great idea.
Well, I
just feel sorry for the guys who got to park it at the valet.
Tesla is also increasing auto leasing, and they're doing it for a couple of reasons. One is that the competition now has gotten stiffer. As we all know, Tesla sales have slipped, mainly because of the competition, and they're looking to still take advantage of that $7,500 tax credit on a lease. But they're not the only one. I just saw a piece where most EVs now are leased, mainly because of that. And it brings the monthly payment down when you lease an automobile versus a purchase.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's going to get interesting, because I agree with you about leasing and the impact that EVs and leasing has had on EVs. I think that's a perfect correlation to get folks at least and look at the technology, and also to understand this is a different way of moving from point A to point B. I like, as you know, I like to go back to the point that we remember, you and I remember, in the mid to late 70s when we went from leaded to unleaded gasoline.
Right.
And, folks were screaming and hollering then, don't take my lead out of my gasoline. Well, now, guess what? That's all
Well,
you
we
can
have we have a note from Wayne. I don't know what Wayne is noping about, but Wayne, go back in the comments and let me know what you're noping about. It must be something I said, whether you like or not. But
Well, at
anyway,
least Wayne's paying attention.
yeah, exactly. At least Wayne is I guess I would say a religious watcher of the show. Everybody shops on Amazon, or just about everybody shops on Amazon, and whether you know it or not, Hyundai and Amazon has been in a partnership where you can purchase an Amazon through Amazon, a Hyundai, and now they've opened it up to like 48 different states. You do all the work online, but you still have to take delivery at a franchise Hyundai dealer. Oh, Wayne came back and said EV leases saves the owners from the EV depreciation hit too. So,
Okay.
we can post.
Wayne
we can
Birdies,
post a
of
comment
course.
we can post a comment on the screen. Look at that. There's Wayne. Hey,
Love it.
Wayne.
Hey, Wayne. As Wayne is fun to have a conversation with.
Yes.
I've sat down and had a few conversations with him over the past. He's an interesting guy because he's not. The one thing I like about Wayne, he's not. It's my way or no way.
Yeah.
He brings a lot of intelligent reasoning to his argument.
And he also
Now,
said
Wayne, he said the charge EV's not a muscle car.
okay.
Wayne,
here
I'll
we
run
go.
anything you and I drive right now.
Yeah, it's extremely fast. But anyway, like I said, you can now purchase a Hyundai online through Amazon. It's going to be interesting to see if other manufacturers jump in the fray. And I was on a Kia event for the Taos, and one of the things
You had a
that they
Volkswagen
were,
event for the house.
I'm in Volkswagen for the Taos, talking about Kia. One of the things that at the Kia event, I went to both events. Kia now has a TikTok configurator? Is that TikTok, which may go away?
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens with TikTok, what happens with TikTok and the government. And I think now the Supreme Court may be taking a look at whether or not that's going to happen or not. Or whether or not the company that owns TikTok, I think they have to sell it or sell off part of it or something.
Yeah, TikTok is owned by ByteDance, which is not ByteDance, but a Chinese company and then they've started trying to diversify and, shed some of its ownership to other brands because the U.S. government says no. Doing technology deals with China is not good for our national security. Now, whether or not that stands up to a court challenge is one thing. And if it is technically banned in the U.S., does that stop people from using TikTok accounts that are based overseas? Because the internet does not respect national borders. So it's going to be an interesting set of conversations to have.
Well, countries can block access to what internet users in their country yet have access to. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with TikTok. Yeah. Moving right along, again with EVs, Toyota is lowering the price of their BZ4X, which we still don't understand how they came up with that nomenclature, but it's BZ4X EV. And they're dropping
Beyond
the price.
Zero four-wheel.
Oh, okay. But they've reduced the price of that car by $6,000. And one of the things that still irked me about car companies is you can have a car in the marketplace 6 months, a year, 2 years later, normally not even 2 years, you drop the price by $6,000, $7,000. some of these EVs, the prices dropped like $15,000. The consumer, that's why they really have a hard time taking auto dealers and manufacturers seriously, or serious rather, because of how they play around with the price of an automobile.
Yeah.
What happened to the what happened on the BZ4X that it's now worth $6,000 less, brand new?
Well, I think Toyota recognized that A was overpriced from the get-go.
Yeah, but not just Toyota, but a lot of manufacturers do the
And
same
B,
thing.
but and they were passing on their development costs to the consumer, and they're realizing, that's not going to work, because after so many years of internal combustion engines and even hybrid development, those development costs were not beaten up on the consumer as bad. And let's face it, for a while, there was a hybrid tax built into the price of the hybrid because it costs more upfront. And so, oh Lord.
Yeah,
What is
well,
Wayne saying? Was the BZ4X this past week poorly designed with a horrible DCFing? Ooh. Wayne, this is a family show.
well, we're going to end on that note. I hope you enjoyed our conversation around the Dodge Charger Daytona. I think what we'll probably do each week is pick a car and kind of get into the ins and outs like we used to years ago. We picked a car and gave what we call our first thoughts. And I think the Charger was a good one to get back to that, because I can remember when Dodge said, we will never have an EV or an electric Charger. We're going to stay with the gasoline or the ICE engine to be true to our enthusiasts.
Yeah, right.
Guess what?
The check's in the mail, the car's really mine, and I promise
Right.
you I'm not married.
Yeah, times change, don't they?
Yeah.
But anyway, I want to thank you for watching Auto Network Reports, the live presentation. I want to thank you for watching the replay. I want to thank Greg for taking the time out of his busy schedule to join in the conversation. I want to thank Wayne for his comments. And like I said, Wayne watches the show all the time. And when I see him, he'll comment. Now that he knows he can be on screen commenting, he'll be commenting like crazy.
Well, which would be lots of fun. Lots of fun.
I want to say Merry Christmas to everybody. Please be safe. Also have a Happy New Year. I think we're going to have one show between now and the New Year. Maybe. But as always, please buckle up. Don't drink and drive. Buckle up. Don't text and drive. See you next time. Thank you,
Be
guys.
safe, everyone.
Be safe.
Have a great holiday.
You too.